There's only three things you can do in a joint, kid. Lift weights, play cards, or get into trouble.
What did you do?
Me? I read.
What did you read?
You ever hear of Machiavelli?
Who?
Machiavelli. It's a famous writer from 500 years ago.
All right, it's time for another installment of Niccolo Machiavelli's The Art of War. All right, we're on book 2, paragraph 4, I do believe, if you're following along at home. And when we last got done, we ended up talking about the difference between the Germans against the cavalry and the Romans against the cavalry, and how the Germans couldn't hold up against the infantry. So let us begin. So Cosimo asked a question. I would desire that you give me some more particular examples so we might understand it better. Fabrizio, I say thusly, that in many places in our histories you will find that the Roman infantry have defeated numberless cavalry, but you will never find them to have be defeated by men on foot, because of some defect they may have had in their arms, or because of some advantage the enemy had in his. For if their manner of arming had been defective, it was necessary for them to follow one of two courses. Either when they found one who was better armed than they, not to go on further with the conquest, or that they take up the manner of the foreigner and leave off theirs. And since neither ensued, there follows what can be easily conjectured, that this method of arming was better than that of anyone else. This has not yet occurred with the German infantry, for it has been said that any time they've had to combat with men on foot organized, and that they obstinate as they have made a bad showing, which results from the disadvantage they have in trying themselves against the arms of the enemy. When Filippo Visconti, Duke of Milan, was assaulted by 18,000 Swiss, he sent against them Count Carmignola, who was his captain at that time. This man, with 6,000 cavalry and a few infantry, went to encounter them, and coming hand to hand with them, he was repulsed with very great damage. Whence Carmignola, as a prudent man, quickly recognized the power of the enemy arms, and how much they prevailed against the cavalry, and the weakness of the cavalry against those on foot so organized, and regrouping his forces, again went to meet the Swiss. And as he came near, he made his men at arms descend from their horses, and in this manner fought with them, and killed all but 3,000, who, seeing themselves consumed without having any remedy, threw their arms on the ground and surrendered. Cosimo, whence arises such a disadvantage? Fabrizio, I have told you a little while ago, but since you have not understood it, I will repeat it to you. The German infantry, as was said a little while ago, has almost no armor in defending itself, and use pikes and swords for offense. They come with these arms in an order of battle to meet the enemy, who, if he is well equipped with armor to defend himself, as were the men at arms of Carmignola, who had them descend on their feet, comes with his sword in order of battle to meet him. He has no other difficulty than to come near the Swiss until he makes contact with them with the sword. For as soon as he makes contact with them, he combats them safely. For the Germans cannot use the pike against the enemy who is next to him. He combats him, who's next to him, because of the length of the staff, so he must use his sword, which is useless to him, as he has no armor, and has to meet an enemy that is protected fully by armor. Whence, whoever considers the advantages and disadvantages of one or the other will see that one without the armor has no remedy, but the one well armored will have no difficulty in overcoming the first blow. And as the first passes over the pike and for battles, as you will understand better when I have demonstrated how they were put together, the men go so that of necessity they accost each other in a way that are attacked on the breast, and if one is killed or thrown to the ground by his pike, those on foot who remain are so numerous that they are sufficient for victory. From this there resulted that Carmignola won with such a massacre of the Swiss, and with little loss to himself. Now, see, what he's saying here is this, all right? He's talking about the advantages and disadvantages of fucking battle, right? And he said, real simply put, he said these motherfuckers came here fighting with pikes, all right, and long fucking spears. And so what he did was he said, look, man, get off your fucking horses, you know what I mean? Because horses are, you know what I mean, pretty vulnerable to fucking spears and shit of this nature, because, you know, they're a distance weapon. So, real simply put, you know what I mean? He said, get off the fucking horses, go in there and fight like a man. And basically, all you have to do is knock the pike out of the fucking way and go in and just massacre them, because they're not covered with anything. It's being able to change what you're doing and adapt to your situation is highly important in any fucking battle. And this is kind of what you're going to take from this. Cosimo, I see that those with Carmagula were men at arms who, although were on foot, were all covered with iron armor, and therefore they could make the attempt that they made. So I think it would be necessary to arm the infantry in the same way if they want to make a similar attempt. Fabrizio, if you had remembered how I said that the Romans were armed, you would not think this way. For an infantryman who has his head covered with iron, his breast protected from a cuirass, and his shield, his arms and legs with armor, is much more apt to defend himself from pikes and enter among them than is a man-at-arms cavalryman on foot. I want to give you a small example. The Spanish infantry had descended from Sicily into a kingdom of Naples in order to go and meet the Consavo, who was besieged in Barletta by the French. They came to encounter against Monsignor D'Aubigny with his men-at-arms, and with about 4,000 German infantry, the Germans coming hand-to-hand with their pikes, low penetrated the ranks of the Spanish infantry, but the latter, aided with their spurs and the agility of their bodies, intermingled themselves with the Germans, so that the Germans, could not get near them with their swords, whence resulted the death of almost all of them and the victory of the Spaniards. Everyone knows how many German infantry were killed in the engagement at Ravenna, which resulted from the same causes. As for the Spanish infantry, got as close to the reach of their swords as the German infantry, and would have destroyed all of them if the German infantry had not been scoured by the French cavalry. Nonetheless, the Spaniards, pressing together, made themselves secure in that place. I conclude, therefore, that a good infantry not only is able to sustain the attack of cavalry, but does not have fear of infantry, which, as I have said many times, proceeds from its arms, armor, and organization and discipline. Cosimo, tell us therefore how you would arm them. Cosimo, tell us therefore how you would arm them. Fabrizio, I would take both the Roman arms and the German, and I would half them armed as Romans and the other half as Germans. For if in 6,000 infantry, as I explain a little later, I should have 3,000 infantry with shields like the Roman and 2,000 pikes like 1,000 gunners like the Germans, they would be enough for me, and I would have placed the pikes either in the front lines of the battle or where I should fear the cavalry the most. And those with the shield and sword, I would serve myself back up the pikes to win the engagement, as I will show you, so that I believe the infantry so organized should surpass any other infantry today. So what he's saying is he's breaking down actual battle tactics here, and I mean during the 1500s, and this is just, I don't know, it's war talk if you're into this type of thing, right? Cosimo, what you have said to us is enough in regards to infantry, but as the cavalry, we desire to learn which seems to be more strongly armed than you, ours or that of our ancients. Fabrizio, I believe that in these times, with respect to saddles and stirrups not used by the ancients, one stays more securely on the horse than at that time. I believe we arm more securely, so that today one squadron of very heavily armed men at arms comes to be sustained with much more difficulty than was the ancient cavalry. With all of this, I judge nonetheless that no more account ought to be taken of the cavalry than was taken anciently. For, as I have said above, they have often in our times been subjected to disgrace by the infantry armored and organized as described above. Tigellinus, king of Armenia, came upon a Roman army of which Lucullus as captain, with an army of 150,000 cavalry, among whom were many armed that are men at arms, whom they called cataphrati, while on the other side of the Romans did not total more than 6,000 cavalry and 15,000 infantry. So that the Tigellinus, when he saw the army of the enemy, said, there are just about enough horsemen for an embassy. Nonetheless, when they came up to the battle, he was routed, and he who writes of the battle blames the cataphrati, showing them to be useless, because he says that having their faces covered, their vision was impaired, and they were little adept at seeing and attacking the enemy. And as they were heavily burdened by the armor, it could not regain its feet when they fell, nor in any way make use of their persons. So, and this is something that, when you think about the old days, about how they used to fight with all that armor over top of their heads and how heavy the fucking armor was and shit. It's a true thing. If you get knocked from your fucking horse, imagine standing up with like fucking 150 pounds worth of shit on you and being able to fight nonetheless. Like you'd be pretty much worthless once you fell off that fucking horse. You know what I'm saying? So, I say therefore that the people of the kingdom which esteem the cavalry more than the infantry are always weaker and more exposed to complete ruin, as he has been observed in Italy in our times, which has been plundered, ruined, and overrun by foreigners, not for any other fault than because they had paid little attention to the foot soldiers and had mounted all of their soldiers on horses. Cavalry ought to be used but as a second and not the first reliance of an army, for if they are necessary and most useful in undertaking reconnaissance and overturning and despoiling an enemy country, and to keep harassing and troubling an enemy army so as to keep it continually under arms and to impede its provisions, but as to engagements and battles on the field, where there are important things in war and the object of which our armies are more organized, they are more useful in pursuing and routing the enemy and are much more inferior to the foot soldiers in accomplishing these things necessary in accomplishing such defeats. All right, we're gonna hang it up right here. You know what I'm saying? Y'all hit me in the fucking comments and tell me what you think, man. Fucking, it's most definitely some interesting shit. You know what I mean? Fucking like, share, and subscribe. Y'all know the deal. Peace.